Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Recruiting is a battlefield where the rules keep changing and the chaos never stops. As the world shifted to remote work, real connection and unfiltered learning have never been more urgent. This isn't just a podcast, it's your survival guide. Welcome to the revolution, your digital bullpen. Hey Scott, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. I feel like I'm under prepared with your mic, and I just have my little Yeti here. But I'm glad that he understood the assignment. So first, I want to first welcome everybody to the Digital Bullpen, where our goal is to create a community of recruiters that are like-minded, wanting to share success stories. Our goal is to expand and create a virtual digital bullpen. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, YouTube, our website, LinkedIn, make sure you like us, share us with your network, because that's the only way we're ever going to grow and spread the word of recruiting, I guess, as we would say.
Paul, you didn't say smash that.
I did not say
button.
smash
But people
that.
aren't going to follow us.
You got to
now,
smash
Paul.
that like button. All right. Well, guys, I'm super excited to introduce a gentleman named Scott Panek, who it's Panek, right? P-A-N-E-K.
That's right.
I didn't. All right. Yeah. I was like,
Don't panic, Scott Panic. That's it.
Yeah, Scott Panek.
I like that.
Don't panic. Scott Panek is on our podcast.
Yes.
Now I'm nervous. He has a better name. Scott's been actually in the staffing industry for 15 years. He's been in major roles focusing from founding his own business, who he now has, which is called Plan2Placement, which I love that name. Scott, your journey has actually been really led by your passion for helping candidates find the right roles, assisting clients to build exceptional teams. You've been in accounting and finance, IT, HR, marketing, operations. I love this part that you are a human-centric approach. That is, I live and breathe those words to recruiting. And you're all about empathy, humility, strong understanding of people and leadership. Scott, it's funny because we all worked in the same kind of where we were with, the LHHs, the old Agilons, and then the Robert Half, and then you went this direction. And so I guess let's dive in. I want to get to know, I gave you a nice little fun, but tell us, how the hell did you get to where you're at now? Tell us about, obviously there was something that happened recently in Spain, a little injury that you want to talk about that, and then talk about your company now. So go for it. You're on.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's a lot. Thank you for the warm introduction, Paul and Mirna. Definitely good to be on the podcast. Appreciate it. I guess, to kind of throw things back a little bit, how I got into the wonderful world of staffing, right out of the gate was interesting enough. So I'm from upstate New York originally, Syracuse, New York. And
I've been all the way to LA.
Yeah. So I was working for Nestle USA at the time, and I was a store-to-store rep. So I'd go to each store and I would say, not do you want to buy a candy bar or two? I'd say, do you want to buy 10,000 candy bars? So high volume product sales. And I did it and I was really good at it and I really enjoyed it. And so I had a couple of opportunities, one either Glendale, California, or two was Nashville, Tennessee. Loved both places, went and visited. And I decided on Glendale, California, kind of left it up to luck, and always liked California and always thought, it'd be cool to live there. So ended up moving out here, and I was a business/financial analyst for Nestle. And I got here with 2 big suitcases and a car, and I was really excited to start, and I hated it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the job necessarily. I love Nestle. I love the company. I love the organization, but the job itself was not for me. And so I went into a Robert Half office back in the day, as much as us did. I don't know how many of us necessarily woke up and said, I want to be a recruiter when I'm older.
Correct.
Nobody does. Nobody does.
Nobody does. Yeah.
We went to it for a job. We just wanted a damn job, and then they talked us into it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I walked in, I met with one of the senior recruiters at the time, and she said, Scott, I'd be happy to place you in another financial analyst or business analyst role, but are you really going to be happy at the end of the day? And I just kind of looked at her, and I think I may have shed a tear and said, no, I don't want to be an analyst anymore. No, I really don't. And she's like, well, you seem to have a great personality. And, I thought about recruiting. And I think my very next question was, what's recruiting? Well, what is a
Right.
recruiter, right? Like, I didn't even
She
know.
got
Like,
you. She got you.
he
Yeah.
got me. And so, yeah, kind of roped me in. And that kind of started my journey, which is kind of an interesting story, but got into the recruitment industry, a little over 15 years ago and have had a wild ride, to date. So it's been a really great experience. But yeah, I guess to fast forward and then we can fill in some of the gaps. But
Yeah.
I was in Spain last Thanksgiving, so 2023, with my oldest son, who's 12. And I was actually there for one of his Real Madrid camps. And he was, he went to a summer camp that year and they said, you did so well, you shined for us. We're going to invite you to our Real Madrid facility to play with some of these elite athletes from all over the world. So, and it's pretty good at the age of 12. So
that's pretty
so anyways,
awesome. Yeah. Dad's gonna retire
I'll go with them. So yeah, so I went along with them, and my wife stayed back and watched my other two while I was in Spain with them, and it was great. We got to see the facility, got to tour around Spain. I mean, it was my second time there. I'd been to both Barcelona and Madrid, love both places, but I said, this is great. So it was that time where it was the coaches versus parents soccer pickup game. And I myself played soccer my whole life. I was a goalie for, close to 15 years and just have a love, passion for the game. And now that I'm, past 40, it's like my brain tells me one thing, but my body's saying a different
It's a
thing.
little different. Yeah.
It's a little bit different, right? Yeah. So I, went out there and, I had my pumped up music, I got everybody pumped up. We had jerseys, everything was like really, we're like, we're going to crush this team, and had the walkout music, and we really made it fun, right? But, let's rewind a little bit. That morning, it's still, I told my son right before I left, because he went one way, I went another way. I went with the parents and coaches. He went with a couple of coaches. So I was like, I'll see you later. He's like, Dad, don't hurt yourself out there. And I'm like, oh, it's good. I'm good.
He jinxed you.
I'm a seasoned veteran here. I got this. So
I'm good.
within the first 5 minutes of the game, though, I was playing center striker, and I was going against a defender who towered me. I'm standing at 6'3", but this guy I think was 6'5", 6'6". I mean, every time I tell the story, he gets a little bit taller.
Of course, yeah, and bigger and meaner.
He had been
Yeah.
7 feet tall, probably.
Yeah, exactly 7 feet tall. Yeah, but he was going to clear the ball down, and I just swept my left leg, and we met at the ball, and it was like I kicked a block, like an iron block in the ground, and I felt a pop and a crack, and I knew right away, and I just knew that I did something really horribly terrible to my knee. And yeah, so I made the most of it. The rest of the trip, I was, cooped up in the hotel room, and I went and met with a bunch of surgeons in Madrid, and I had a translator with me because my Spanish es no bueno.
Like mine,
I was gonna say, sounds like Paul. Okay, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a translator, and they kind of walked me through, and the one thing that I did pick up was, we need to operate here in Spain on you. And I just thought, no, there's no way. Like, I gotta get back home. Like, I don't want to, because I know there's a 2-week post-op. Like, you can't fly for 2 weeks. So anyways, they brought a couple of other experts in, and they said, we think Scott's okay to fly home back to LA. So I had to wait 3.5 days in the Madrid hotel while, waiting for my flight to fly out, and finally made it back. And I just thought in my head, maybe I didn't really break my knee. Maybe I'm fine. Maybe it's all like made up in my head. And
the denial phase.
In the denial period, exactly. But I met with one of the top surgeons in Southern California, Cedars-Sinai, who put me back together. But I met him and I said, after he saw my x-rays and CT scan, all that stuff, I said, so doctor, do I actually need surgery? He's like, yeah. You do. I'm like, okay, when? I was thinking like a week, 2 weeks. Like, I thought they'd have to schedule me. He was like, 10 minutes ago.
Oh
like,
my God. You're like,
now,
you should have had it. Yeah.
Oh,
tomorrow morning.
Scary.
So he cleared his schedule for the next day, and I had the surgery, and but back on my feet now, feeling a lot better. Definitely a tough road to recovery, especially opening up, kind of going the next thing, Plan2Placement, right? My new business, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and there's certainly some pretty big takeaways, because I know a lot of us go through a lot of adversities throughout our career, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. Well,
Well,
I'm
we're
glad that
glad you're like healing.
Was it,
That
so is it just a
sounds
broken knee or like an
terrifying.
ACL or like?
Yeah, so it was my tibia plateau. So it's
Uh,
basically if you touch your kneecap and you go just below your kneecap,
yeah,
that's your
Yeah.
tibia plateau. So
yeah.
it's your weight-bearing bone as well, and
So
it's
it's
really
super
good. The doctor said
important.
I kind of sort of won the lottery breaking that because it's one of the hardest bones to break. Like you actually have to try to break that bone because
Oh,
it's a very
Just a
rare
freaking
break.
overachiever. Just a,
Overachiever, but it's one of the most painful ones too, and one of
oh,
the
I'm
worst recoveries.
sure.
oh
So
my God.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Oh, well, it sounds like you're thriving. Yeah, now.
thriving now. Yeah.
Yeah, you doing any more like pickup games like that or
No more
taking it
football.
easy
I hung up my cleats for good.
for the time
Smart.
No, but
being? Yeah,
I am coaching. I've always
There you go.
that's been
that's
kind of my
awesome.
passion is coaching soccer. So I'm coaching one of my sons right now and definitely enjoying that. That's really good. That helps kind of fill the soccer void. But as far as
Yeah.
getting out there and getting crazy competitive again, I'll
Yeah.
stick to golf.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
For sure.
Less contact.
Well, I mean, you kind of like dived in a little bit of like how you kind of got into staffing very like random, like everybody else. Somebody happened to see something in you and you're like, sure, talk to me about that. But walk us through how, how you've made it to starting your own firm now and like everything in between that you've been doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, to go back a little bit is kicking things off in staffing. I think it's certainly rewarding, a lot of highs and lows. And I think
Yeah.
knowing all the highs and lows that I've gone through in my staffing career and, managing some really big teams, managing some small teams, interacting with a lot of leadership throughout and you kind of pick and choose, the things that work for you and the things that don't work, right? I think that's one of the neat things about our industry is it's always how do you become better? How do you better yourself within, the industry? And I think that's something that I finally got to a point in my career after working for some really large, Fortune 500, obviously, it's the Robert Halfs, the
Yes.
Agilon, LHH, what have
We've
you,
been
Java.
there. We've been there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, all really great experiences. And I can say that, wholeheartedly, a lot of the people that I've worked with have gotten me to the point that I am at today, as far as feeling like my bag in my tool belt was strong enough to start my own firm, which I started, the beginning of this year. And although I was kind of bedridden and wheelchair ridden and crutches for the first 2-3 months of Plan2Placement because I was non-weight bearing with my injury for 2-3 months. I wasn't able to walk on it versus a knee surgery. They want you to run on it the next day. Me, different. They needed it to heal. So I think with that said, that was certainly, just had enough in my, under my tool belt. I think that I felt good to start my own business, which is Plan2Placement, which has been a real big blessing for me because it's been able to give me the opportunity to work with a lot of the great clients and a lot of great new clients that I've known throughout the years, a lot of really good candidates. And it's been just kind of a breath of fresh air. I think just kind of a new take on, the business and how we operate. And I think with, there's a lot of different tools out there, including AI. That's a really big one with all the different neat things that help make our job easier as recruiters. Right. And with all that, it's been a really, really great ride. It's been a bumpy ride, but it's been a really rewarding one as well.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Plan2Placement. Because I mean, obviously that's what you're doing now. Like, what do you recruit for? Like, what's your kind of target audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So Plan2Placement with the idea, with rewind a little bit with the name itself was, I think it's really important. I think a lot of companies kind of jump into the hiring thing and they say, we need to hire this, this, and this, and this from what I've learned historically speaking. But I think it's important to come up with a plan, and that was something that was important to me in the name as well is let's kind of plan it out a little bit. Let's really kind of think deep, dive a little deeper into what exactly you're looking for. You're looking for a controller. Great. What's that controller going to look like? And just kind of dig into the roots behind it a little bit and why you need a controller and why, if it is a replacement, why the previous one didn't work out, what have you, and just really kind of dig in a little bit more versus just kind of that.
Get some resumes.
To hire. Throw some controller resumes and let's hire. It's like, let's really plan out that placement to make sure it's successful and make sure it's going to stick. Cause I think that's something that I've we've all worked with those companies that are revolving doors, and it's like, it's great for us, but does it make sense for the company?
Yeah.
And the
Probably
candidate
not.
too. And the candidate's not going to like, I mean, we have to look at the candidate's
candidate.
placement too, right? Yeah. You got to think about both people. I love that.
It's
Exactly.
interesting that you
Yeah.
say plan to placement, and
We
I
have
don't know
that board.
Paul, I don't know if Paul was going to bring it up, but it was some like, Lee
It was a
had
pilot
in
we
a
did,
Deco
yeah.
group. It was like a pilot. We were always like testing things out, and one of the outcomes of this meeting was we were going to create plan to placement boards, different from like your job order boards, different from like tracking your candidates. And it was really going to say, hey, this is like my top candidate of this week. Here's the companies I'm going to target, and you literally plan to placement. So seems very similar, but like you're also talking a lot about the details that go behind that, which is getting to know your client, asking the questions. And, sometimes these clients just feel like if they tell you what they're looking for, you're just supposed to like get it. But when you're able to like get involved in their business and ask those questions of like, why is this position open? Why didn't the person before do well? Where did you feel like you missed the mark on that hire? That creates just like such a different consultative approach in my mind.
Yeah.
100%. Sure. Yeah. And I'll sell the name Plan2Placement to you guys for $1 million. You want to bring it back and incorporate a podcast.
We'll talk to LHH about it. I don't know if they still have those boards.
I don't know if they still do it.
Who knows? We'll have to ask
It was like actually really exciting. It worked.
But,
like for the people that saw the reasoning behind it, the why. It really created a great client experience, and it also created a great candidate experience, because you also told the candidates like, hey, you're one of my plan to placement candidates, and my team and I are now going to like all work together to target these companies to get you this job. And it really was this different approach. So I hope people kind of listen to this, because it is what makes like a great recruiter an excellent recruiter.
And I like what you said, that like you dive in, and I always make the methodology. I like to make up words and make the wrong ones, but I always like the analogy that like recruiting is very much a project management role, and you're taking on a project, and it's kind of like if you're building a house, you don't just say, okay, guys, start going. And then you're like, figure out the bathroom when they're building it, right? No. It's like you take a step back and you set up your timeline. You set up what does it need to look like? What does success look like, right? When are you happy with that master bath, right? And it's like, but it's the same concept that I think you're doing, and you're taking on as a project manager, which I think ultimately seems to like probably why your clients like working with you, because there's that success metric that you take the time in advance to really get to know the project. So I freaking love that. That's awesome. So, and you guys, obviously you're accounting and finance, IT, technology, HR, operations, and marketing, right? Is that your?
Yep, that's exactly right. On a direct hire basis as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. So let's I mean, obviously this is fun, and I mean, we could talk about plan to placement all day, but
let's do it.
But I guess I want to go in, because you've obviously running your own business right now, but you've been obviously a successful leader as well, right? Director of permanent placement, you've been branch manager, VP, you were a principal recruiter, executive recruiter. So I want to dive in. It's like, what was the toughest nut to crack as a leader in staffing? And what is that? Nobody really, sometimes they don't teach you as well to be a leader. You kind of have to figure it out, and then you learn from others. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think, you learn a lot of lessons along the way. Again, this path has not been easy, in the staffing industry, but I can say, I think the biggest one for me is staying positive during the lows. I think there's a lot of lows in our industry, especially when you start hearing about layoffs and hiring freezes, and our budget has been maxed out. We don't have the headcount. We don't have the budget for staffing services like yours. We got to do everything internal. It's like, how do you overcome, and how do you build back and kind of build that mindset that, this is temporary, and although things aren't going your way right now, you still got to stay on top, and you got to keep your mindset strong. And that's something that's, I think historically, I've always tried to, kind of instill in my team as well, and just my own work ethic as well. When I'm when I'm working with a team, it's like, how do you stay strong after you get 50 no's in a day after you call plans so hard? Or, it's like you get all these, email rejections, or you don't even get a rejection via email,
Right.
it's like you just get the silent treatment, right? Or you take a job order and it's, 15, 20 minutes and you feel great about it. You're in a cloud nine, you're high-fiving and fist pumping everybody in the bullpen.
Yeah.
And then you can't get the client back on the phone. It's like, I think those are a lot of things that we're all faced with. And I think it's just, how do you overcome that when you are faced with that type of, unexpected low that just kind of brings you down sometimes. I would say that's probably the big thing.
I had a leader advise me that one time, because positivity is always like, I think that's what carries a lot of people through it. I mean, it's easy to find the net. It's so easy. If you want to look for a negative, you're going to find it every day in this industry, right? But it's almost like, I forget who it was that said, he's like, just even if the call was a no, like, did you get a little bit from that call? Did you get a little bit of knowledge? Right. Did you learn something about that manager? Did you get a time to follow up, right? Mm-hmm. Did you get a better time to talk? Like, there's the small win that you have to focus on. Or you could take the rest of the negatives. So it's like, it's that same, you got to continue to look at that positive, because there's so many opportunities to side negative. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's always, at the end of the day, good always prevails. And I think if you look at the wins and you take little small wins throughout the day, it's just going to make you that much stronger within not just your career in staffing, but also just in life, right?
Totally.
It's just a lot, especially with the chaos in the world.
There's
today.
Negative everywhere.
There's negative everywhere you look. You turn on the news, you turn on this, you turn on that. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, if you're able to add up some of those wins, even if they're small wins, but if you add those up over time, you're gonna feel that much better, and you're gonna feel better about yourself and better about your business and better about your customers and candidates, and you're just gonna feel like you're adding value at the end of the day, which is what we all want to do, especially in industry, is how you add value, right? So
absolutely. Well, I mean, you've been in the industry for quite some time. So what's like the coolest thing you've come up with to tackle in terms of like a big problem in your past leadership, or even like with building a new company, right?
Yeah, I would say, some of the big things is staying focused on task at hand, and I definitely planning out your day and staying on top of it, because I think within our industry as well, you're so quick to say, chase the shiny penny,
shiny object,
scroll here, and it's like, and I'll find myself doing it today, too. I'll be like, I'll be in something, I'll look out the window and I'll see a squirrel,
literally. Yeah.
Like, not the bird feeder squirrel, that's for the birds. And it's like, you just get distracted easy, right? Yeah. And so I think staying focused and staying on a task at hand, I think that's so important, especially writing down. I've noticed as well, that's one of the big things with me is write stuff down and have a, have a list of things, a to-do list. It sounds really cliche, but definitely plan out the day and have a really tight list. And these are the things that I definitely want to accomplish for the day, and staying, task at hand. And then also little small blocks of time, which I think, which I can say that I did enjoy, I think, with the Robert Halfs and the Agilons, the blocking and call till you're blue in the face for 30 minutes, everybody go. And it's like, all right, let's go. So I think that's something that is, certainly I try to do, day in and day out, with my own business.
It works. I'm working on a training right now and developing a training for recruiters. And I literally just did a training and developed for call blocking and call planning. Right. And it's like, but it is true. It's like, I think it was Mike McNamara. I don't know if you remember good old Mike McNamara back in the Agilon days, but he used to say, where there's a task, there's a time. And it's the same concept. He's like, you write down your task and get a time for it. It sounds stupid, but I'm the same way. I have a window I look out as well, and there's a bird feeder, and I'm like, oh, look at that. That's a hummingbird feeder. It's not for you, right? Same thing. And then I'm like, so then my mind's off. But I love it. So I guess looking at that, when it comes to advice, obviously time blocking and that was good advice. But what would you say is like maybe something, if you had to pick one piece of advice, maybe even that you would tell like year one you, or like new you, and then what's the worst piece of advice you ever received? You don't have to say who it's from.
Yeah, I would say
it's a safe space.
It's a safe space. Yeah. I would say the best piece of advice is, it's hard to say, but I would say I'm going to say it lightly, embrace the suck, I think,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's something that's really important because there's some really sucky times in our industry where it's like things just aren't going well, things aren't going great. But at the end of the day, it's so nice when you get that, you know, big check for 40K, or you make that really phenomenal placement. You're feeling really good about yourself, and you feel like it was really organic placement. You found the right person for the right job. And so there's a lot of highs, and that's what's kept me in it. But I think, you know, again, just really staying focused and understanding that not all things are going to go your way in our industry, and how do you overcome that, and what are some things that you can do in your day to day. And I love it. Like I absolutely love some of the ideas that are out there. You know, a lot of recruiters say, I go for a walk for a half hour. I meditate. I do this. I read some books that are like, you know, to pump me up. I listen to music. You know, I listen to this song before I make 50 calls. Like, yeah, I do that. I think that's all really good stuff. So I think anything you can do to kind of embrace, just kind of the downfalls in our industry, and that'll just make you that much stronger, you know, when you bounce back.
Yeah.
And I do think like if you focus on what you know works, which you talked about, the call planning, like, you know, that like if that is like the focus, then all of those wins, you said, all those wins just kind of catch up. And then all of a sudden, like, it's not so sucky. Like there's times, of course, but it's really like the foundation. At least that's my point of view, because it's not always easy. I work remote. My partner works in Salt Lake. And yes, we communicate all the time, but it's not, and you're working by yourself. Like you're your own hype man, right? Like I at least can like reach out to my buddy Steve and be like, Steve, like, man, today's really sucked. Like, how's your day? Like, and then be able to like come together. But I always go back to, okay, that didn't work. Let me get back to my plan.
Back to basics.
Like, back to the basics, back to the plan. And that's always kind of like that foundation for me, that thing that keeps me like even keel for
grounded
for most of the time.
And I think being real as well, and you know, always leading with empathy. I think that's really important too. Like knowing what's important to you may not be important to Paul or Myrna. You know, it's like really understanding that, you know, there's different strokes for different folks, and really having that mindset and that idea that everybody's different. And, you know, again, some of the things that I think like, oh, this person's going to really want this. They want a ton of money. They want a lot of flexibility. They want a lot of this. They want a lot of that. I mean, it brings me back, you know, to the day where I worked really hard. And just a quick, you know, interesting story that I think it just made me think of was early on, it was my Agilon days. So I was looking to place a accounting manager in a role. And I talked to him and I said, geez, this is a great job. It's paying this, it's paying that. And it's got a potential for bonus and all that stuff. And he didn't really seem too excited about it. And he came into my office. It was back in the day when we actually met with people in the office, and it was the handshake, and we had him a salary guide, and we gave him a big smile. And, you know, met him in the lobby. And I sat and talked with this guy for a while. And the big piece that I missed was, I'll get to that piece in a minute, because then I spoke with the client afterwards, and I said, geez, you know, I know it's paying 130, but can we get him to 150? You know, I was really pushing hard, and finally
the salary.
I kind of pushed the client a little bit too far, and the client said, you know what, we don't feel comfortable anymore. We're going to pass on them, and we're not interested. And so I just thought, oh man, I tried hard. I tried to get him more money. And then afterwards I talked to the guy, and he got really real with me, and it just made me think, oh no. And I told him what had happened. And he said, Scott, he said, I got to be honest with you. He said, you know, I understand, you know, I really wanted that job, not because of the money. And he got into that his dad or his parents own a couple oil rigs in Texas. The guy's worth $250 million. He does not need to work, but he enjoys it and he loves it, but he does not do it for the money. And I just thought, oh man, it's like, so I kind of kicked myself after that. I thought, geez, if I just kind of dug a little bit deeper and asked, you know, I think I would have been in a better place and more prepared to help, you know, represent him better. Because I don't think I did a good job. But, you know, that was over 10 years ago. So,
but it's so funny because it's like those moments are like seared in your brain.
Oh, yes.
Like, it's like, oh my
100%.
God. But
it's part of your DNA now.
It's like, oh God, I'll never do that again. But for people that are like learning this, like, what was that shift? Like, you realize, like, I didn't really dive into like the motivators of the candidate. So how did you make that shift going forward? Because I think that's important to kind of like, how did you learn from that lesson?
Yeah, I think it's slow down a little bit
Yeah.
and kind of sit back and think and, again, always realize what's important to you may not be important to somebody else,
Yeah.
when you're trying to fill a job and getting to understand what's important to them and really
Yes.
digging in deep, what are some of the key things that are important to you about this job? Right away, we think right away as recruiters, like, oh,
Money.
you want fully remote,
Money.
you want hybrid, you want
Yeah.
that, you want that.
No.
Some people love working in the office. Some people really enjoy it,
Yeah.
and they say, "I love getting back in there, and I love the water cooler talk, and I love
Mhm.
the crappy pizza on Fridays." And it's like you just don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things that's
Yeah.
important just to slow down and ask some questions to get to know somebody on a more of a personal level, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Mary, did you remember I don't know if you ever, the 9-step questioning technique. Do you ever remember that? I don't know if you taught, but it was what's important to you besides pay and benefits, right? And you ask somebody, what is that first thing? And then you say, well, what does that mean to you? And why is that important? And then you say, what?
I do remember that.
Why? Why? It's not, but it's funny because it's like, it's true to your point. Like when somebody says culture and you're like, great, culture's important. You move on. You're like, okay, culture to you means something totally different than it means to me. And then you ask the what. And what's funny is they tell you the what, but when you ask that why, then you really get the story of who they are, right? And it's like, so I love everything you're saying because it's why you're good at what you do because you're following those basic steps that we learned because we probably did not do them.
Absolutely, yeah. And then to go on to the worst piece of advice, I guess, because I knew there was a double question there. Yeah. I think, it's only focused on the numbers, I would say, and just really focus on the amount of dials, the amount of calls, the amount of connects, the amount of times you pitch, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think that may work for some people, but I think that's something where it's important because, again, us as staffing professionals early on in our careers, as we're staffing managers or executive recruiters, what have you, again, I think it's important, to understand that people are different, and when they're under pressure and they need to hit a certain, which is it's at the end of the day, it's important, right?
To a point.
To a point, but also that's not the end all be all. I think there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it versus just hit your numbers and
I hear you.
No, that's so true. And we had JD. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to JD, but she really talks about that. It's just like really talking about more of, well, what's really your motivator? Like, what do you want to get out of this role and how's that going to affect you personally or professionally? And then just working backwards. And that may not be like, what we were taught, like 300 dials a week will get you, whatever that math was. I never remember it now, but to the good stuff, because there's so many like fun stories in recruiting, and I feel like and I'm sure a lot of people feel this because we've talked about it before, but like on my team, we would always be like, I wish like we could be like a reality TV show and like have cameras just because you just hear the funniest things, the craziest things. So like share with us like some like the funny or totally weird stories from like your leadership journey that you've never shared before. And I think you have something for us already planned for that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I have a ton of stories that I could share, as we all do, right? But I think one that stands out a lot to me was back in the day, it was early on in my career. So I was with Office Team. So, which is part of Robert Half. And I was, I placed a candidate, an executive assistant, and he was working for, I believe it was a CPA firm. And he called me one afternoon and it was around lunchtime. It was around like 12:30, 1 o'clock. And I took the call from him and he said, Scott, I just want to bounce a couple things off of you. And I said, yeah, shoot. What do you got for me? I'm here. He said, well, I just want to make sure that I'm okay doing what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, yeah. What exactly are you doing? He said, well, I had to go, I'm working for the president right now. And I had to go to the school and pick up a couple of his kids, and then I had to bring them home. And so I'm like, well, where are you right now? And he's like, well, I'm in the car right now, and the kids are in the back. And he's like, I'm driving to their house, and I'm instructed to make them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cut them up apple slices and wait until their mom gets home. He's like, is that okay? I'm just thinking, I really don't think
don't think so.
But we're going to go with it. Like, why don't you call me after at the end of the day and we can kind of talk through it. But, at the same time,
get the kids home safe first.
Yeah.
Get the kids home safe first and then we'll talk about it. So yeah, that was definitely something where I was like,
oh
stepping
my God.
on the box a little bit as an executive.
On the executive assistant side, office, like all of that, we always ran into stuff. We're like, but you didn't
I had to walk his
mention
dog.
They needed to do like personal like errands. Like,
well, they all think executive assistant it's synonymous with a personal assistant, right? Come on.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh
Guess
my
what?
God,
it's not.
It's not.
Okay, well, let's go for it. Yeah.
I was just gonna say another quick little story that I thought was great was I placed a senior accountant in a role, and the CFO for a CFO, and the CFO had sent me an email that night and said, he's not really working out. He's not very personable. Doesn't really have a great attitude. Not fixing well with the team. So we would like you to release him tonight and make sure, he doesn't come back the next morning. So I had a conversation that night. He was very upset, distraught. And I just said, look, really sorry. I'll help you find something else, not the right fit. And so I told him, you're not allowed to go back. You need to stay away from, the office. I got a call from the HR director the next morning. And the HR director said, so we have the gentleman that you placed in the job. He's actually sitting in the CFO's office right now. Our front admin forgot to deactivate his badge the night before. So he's sitting in the CFO's office, and the CFO went to go walk in and said that he is not going to leave until he gets a good explanation as to why he was terminated from his job.
Oh my.
And so,
so we
had to put that out. That was not a fun call, but we ended up having to call the police and he was escorted out. So
that's I would say that's, as much as these stories are at the time, you're like, oh fuck, right? Like, what is happening? But I think that's also, staffing is never boring. Like, it is never boring. Like, you could be in a job where it's the same thing every day, or you're working for a company that sells widgets and it's widgets day in, day out. We work people and they do not disappoint. Like, we are definitely so we know people doesn't disappoint, but I want to talk a little bit about AI, because that's something that you talked a little bit about, and it's a big thing in our industry. You like that transition? That was fun.
I was just going to say something about it. Ooh, fancy transition.
But I do want to, before we get to know a little bit about you, like, I want to know, like, how you see AI impacting our jobs, and like, what do you think that it can't replace?
Yeah. I think making staffing individuals and professionals, recruiters, more efficient in their jobs. So I don't see it necessarily replacing the staffing industry, but I think it will help improve efficiency and help create more streamlined processes to help identify great talent for jobs. Because at the end of the day, again, to answer the second part of your question, is there always needs to be some sort of human element, right? Because one of the things that we work with is an imperfect product, and that's people, So I think it's understanding individuals' personalities and understanding, really deep diving into the cultural fit, making sure companies have a good plan and make sure that you have a good idea of what they're looking for and what a candidate's looking for and what's important to them. You can't always get that out of a resume, or even a cover letter for that matter. So I think that AI is certainly here to stay. And I think the ones that are able to embrace it and grab it and latch onto it the fastest and the quickest are the ones that are going to come out on top at the end of the day, I would say.
And they use it for the right points in the recruitment process, to your point. Like, it's almost like there's that point where you need that human interaction to make sure that that person isn't just going along for the ride, because too much AI, somebody might be going along with the process, but they're half in, half out, right? So it's I love it.
Well, and then something else that I think AI cannot do, and what I think a lot of recruiters, at least good recruiters, do, they're good storytellers. They're able to have a resume, you talk to the candidate, you interview the candidate, and you just like bring that resume to life by telling the story, right? And it just can change. I've placed people that did not have the ideal resume, but I was able to share that story about them. And many times, not always, it was like, this is like the best hire I've ever had. Like, I'm so glad you kind of shared that with me because I didn't see it on the resume. Well, how could you? You can't put all of that stuff in the resume, right? Like, you gotta like be concise to some extent. So I love when we can kind of like share that story of that candidate and, you know, help them be in a better position, hopefully, with their job search.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, truth be told, you know, some of my best placements ever, no offense, but the resumes were horrible.
Totally. Yes.
Good,
yes.
You know, so really bad, poor resumes, and they just, but phenomenal candidates, great placements, and the ones that you know, are now clients of mine and that I've worked with and known for many, many years. So I think there's obviously there's a lot that can be told about resumes, you know, with, you know, obviously spelling, grammar, you know, punctuation, you know, kind of digging a little bit, right? Just to show someone's orderliness. And, but I think at the end of the day, you know, resume can only get you so far. And that's one nut that I don't think AI is going to necessarily be able to crack.
Good point.
Exactly.
At least within the next 10, 15 years. So I think we're safe for the next 10, 15 years after that. I don't know.
I'm retiring.
We'll bring you back on and see what your thoughts are then.
Yeah. I'll be in a totally different job. So.
Well, let's get to know.
Well, let's see. What do we got? What do we got next? Let's get to know. Yeah, we've got our fast four, or is it fast five today? What did we decide?
It's just fast four. Yeah. Well, we talked about you. Let's get to know a little bit about, you know, what's behind the veil. Yeah, right?
Sure.
So what's your guilty pleasure after you've been recruiting all day? How do you unwind? How does Scott settle back into Scott's life?
Not playing soccer.
Over my left shoulder, I do like to strum the guitar a little bit. So let's throw that out there. Every time I pick it up and I play it, though, I think I get a little worse each time I play it. So not supposed to happen that way. You're supposed to get a little better, right? But I definitely enjoy, you know, music and instruments and hanging out with my family. I think that's huge. But also, you know, watching a good thriller action movie. Definitely enjoy that. Or you know, catching a great sports match. You know, anything, you know, basketball related, college football, NFL, MLS, you know, anything and everything. That's my decompressor.
I want to know what's one thriller that you're like, if somebody's like, you're going to have to watch this thriller, what would it be? I know that I spot on.
Right on the spot.
Sorry. I'm being selfish here because like my partner likes thrillers.
Paul wants something to watch. That's what this is.
I saw recently, I don't know if I necessarily recommend it because it's pretty brutal, but the Terrifier movies, I don't know if you've seen those.
I haven't.
Those are a little much though. So
that's all right.
Blood, guts, gore, scary.
PJ loves that. I'm like, why are we watching bloody gore? Okay.
Oh, that maybe will definitely like that. Just thinking about it is like grossing me out.
Okay,
so like let's go. 10-second clip, and I'm like, I cannot watch that.
I'm out. She tapped out.
I'm out.
Okay, so let's talk about the last show. Speaking of that, you binge watch. Couldn't get enough on.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I try to stay away from shows as much as possible because I get roped in and I can't stop watching it. I need to watch it from start to finish, but probably Ozark. I know that's going to date me a little bit here, but I absolutely love Ozark. And
that's a good one.
A really phenomenal show. And I think I've actually watched it over twice because I really enjoyed it. And The Office. Absolutely love The Office. So
always.
Can never get enough of The Office. Yeah.
You can never. It's just like funnier the more you watch it. And who's Ryan the Temp? That's like my favorite like part of The Office because he's like, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like part of my world. I get it. All right. So what is some stuff that's currently living on your nightstand?
I don't know why we asked this question because we're going to get something weird sometime, but I love it.
I know. It's always a little, and Paul always makes me ask it. So I'm always like,
Yeah, it's usually 2 to 3 glasses of water that are half empty. Because you can't have the same glass of water on your nightstand from the night before because it collects the dust and you don't want to have that. So usually a few glasses of water and maybe a bottle of water just because I like to mix it up. I think it's important to have as much water bedside as possible. And maybe a motivational book too. So I do like to sometimes read a little bit at night, you know, before bed. So
Anything you're reading
Nothing
right
too
now?
Exciting.
Anything you're reading right now that you like?
Leadership books.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is right now. Anything, leadership and, what's going to make you a better person at the end of the day. That's kind
Totally.
of the self-help stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we need
that.
at nighttime when you lay. I'm like, I need some self-help. It's been a day. Let's see what we got. I love
Who
it.
can help me today?
Leader. Just like, I need some good, pats on the back. Yeah. Working your own, running your own company. You don't always get that. So you kind of have to self-soothe.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Last
Absolutely.
one, and always love to end with gratitude, but what's something, there's something that's filling your heart with gratitude right now or you're grateful for?
Yeah. Well, I would say aside from the podcast and Paul and Myrna, being on this has been definitely phenomenal, a lot of fun. I would just say family, friends, and, amazing support that's gotten me to the point that I am with my own company with Plan2Placement and really just kind of building a great foundation and, excited about what's to come and with the future, with the holidays, coming up here really, really quick with Thanksgiving and, Christmas and New Year's and going into 2025 with just, again, a really strong tool belt and excited to, help a lot of great clients and customers and help people achieve their goals and succeed, I think, because that's kind of the passion, at the end of the day, kind of summarize. That's something I've really enjoyed doing is really helping people, be better, be stronger, be faster, whatever it is, in their career and their, personal lives, help coach them, even if I don't place them in a job. But if I can give them a couple of really good tips and tricks that are going to help them, it's kind of the whole pay it forward attitude. And I'm a firm believer of that. So,
Well, I tell you what, that's with your
absolutely.
attitude.
I mean,
go for it, Peter.
I was just going to say, thanks, Scott, for everything. I mean, is there anything that we can personally do to support you with your new business?
Yes.
I know we talked a little bit behind the scenes, but I mean, is there anything that we can do to help you with your new business and thriving business at that?
You guys are doing it right now. So I guess just staying connected and staying, and just, I think that's one of the key things for me is just staying in touch. I think that's important and just staying.
Excellent. Well, that's easy.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
We appreciate you so much, Scott.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks for being on the podcast. Can't wait to connect.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Thanks for trusting
you guys
us.
are awesome.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye.